Okay, Jim. Let's begin World War II here today. We're not going to have the Japanese bomb the neighborhood, I don't think, but we'll at least get started here. And I thought, since we had covered basically the early 40s up until the time of the Sugar Bowls, when you were playing freshman, I think, at the University of Tennessee, and I wanted to pick it up right there, and we shut that down at that time, saying we would come back to it, so here we are. So I think that was, you're telling me, New Year's Day, January 1943, so I'd like for you to pick up the story there and see what was going on.
Just back up about a month. Back then, I just have to make notice of the fact that back there was never any decision that had to be made about going into the military. I mean, everybody wanted to go into the military. Obviously, there weren't, not everybody, but I mean, everybody that I knew figured that this is what had to be done, and you know, that's what you did. You went to the service, and so there wasn't any crybabying or anything like that going on. Mm-hmm. Most of the guys were, or say most of the people, contemporaries, were just waiting to be drafted, but not causing any problems about it. And say, I'm going to be drafted, and so I'll just wait and, you know. With us, we all enlisted, and just between you and I'm very proud of that I wasn't drafted, mm-hmm. that I enlisted. And if you go back in those days, your serial number started with a 3, you were drafted. If it started with a 1, you enlisted. So
how about that? I didn't know that.
Anyway, that's between you and me.
I never knew that.
Yeah, and 141-92726. I still got that baby up there. And matter of fact, you see that square thing right there in the middle of that picture, that frame right there?
Yes, I do.
That's my prison dog tag. That's my German dog tag.
I want to see that.
Well, anyway, that's it was scored, and it was made of pot metal or something like that. And if they had to use it, if you got killed or something like that, they just popped it in half, and one stayed with you, and one was turned in. So that was just, you just take and pop it right in half, and it would go in half. Little satellite there. Well, anyway, I just wanted to say that it wasn't any great big decision that you worried about. Well, you knew you were going into service, and just a question of what it was going to be like. Mm-hmm. Mine didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted it to. I enlisted for pilot training, and of course, see, the Air Corps was part of the Army then. It wasn't the air. They had air forces, that they had ground forces, but the Army Air Corps was the Army Air Corps, not the Air Forces we know it today. Mm-hmm. And so I enlisted for pilot training, and then we played in the Sugar Bowl, and I got knocked around, and went back for my subsequent physical. Had a little flutter in one eye, and was washed out of pilot training right away. Not even a sniff. And ended up in the infantry, and that's the way it was. I don't know whether I didn't really think about it, whether I wanted to be in the Navy or the Marines, or I didn't really care all that much. And but that's the way that took place. Okay, let's see. The first thing that happened after the boot training, basic training, I found myself in a battalion of that were all people exactly in the same situation I am. Generally freshmen or sophomores from college, mostly freshmen from college, or recent high school graduates. And a little bit, this really doesn't apply to me a little bit, but a little bit above the Army General Army General test, a little above what the average was. Mm-hmm. And so after I got out of the first out of boots out of basic, I was sent to North Dakota State University, and it's part of an officer's training program that when you got your degree you were commissioned. And I was there for only one semester, and conditions with the war were such that they couldn't continue that program anymore. They'd take all of us, out of that program and put us back in with our line outfits. So outside of the one little semester at the little cow college up there in Fargo, North Dakota, which I remember dearly, I was in the infantry, and we trained very well.
Where was basic training, Jim? Where did
Basic training was in Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Okay.
Oh, what a place! It was great. If I could get a little crude here, many people said that if you were going to give the world an enema, that's where you would start. In Fort McClellan. Anyway, at Fort McClellan, and from there to Fargo for the one semester, which happened to be in the wintertime, incidentally, and then down to Camp Gruber, Oklahoma, which was outside of a town called Muskogee, not far from Tulsa, 60 miles from Tulsa, and Oklahoma State, not Oklahoma State, Stillwater, where Oklahoma State is, and joined what was being formed right at that time was the Rainbow Division, 42nd Division was being formed at that time, and I joined that division, and pretty much normal things took place. I was tapped to be a weapons specialist, so I did some special training in all of the infantry weapons. By that I mean all the weapons that the infantry use, like a 45 and a rifle and a carbine and a submachine gun and a light machine gun, a heavy machine gun, light mortar, heavy mortar, even a 105 cannon. I was just part of the program that got into that. Consequently, while I was in all that stuff, I was a buck private for 16 months and 6 days. Oh. But at any rate, I made a couple of attempts to get into OCS. The first time, everything was fine, except that I was 18 years old, and they just figured that it would be better if I were a little older for going in. The second time, I was accepted for OCS and was all ready to go. As a matter of fact, I was all checked out of the division, was down on the railhead ready to head for Benning to infantry school. And there was about 50 of us that were going. All of us were non-coms at the time. And we were all going to OCS, and the train was there. We were on the train. And all of a sudden, whistle came in, fallout. We fall out onto the railhead there, and they said everybody with heavy weapons, MOSs, everybody else had stand still, and everybody else get back on the train. And everybody else gets back on the train and look around. There's 8 of us that were weapons guys, and they said, well, what happened was is that they had to change the orders. That the division was hot. We were going overseas right away. They could replace the riflemen, but they couldn't replace the weapons non-coms, and so there it went that way. And, the other time, I was actually promoted in what they call a battlefield commission. The night before we got captured, I got promoted to platoon leader, which is a second lieutenant, and nobody ever knew it, and all the records, so that went out the window that way. Anyway, that's that stuff. We were trained very well in Oklahoma, and left for overseas in the early fall of '44, and we arrived at the port of Marseille just immediately following the invasion of southern France. Now I forget exactly what the code name is for that, but Overlord, of course, was, you know, the D-Day thing. Well, immediately after they got a beachhead there, just a couple of weeks after the Normandy landing, they hit into the bottom up out of the Mediterranean at Marseille, and it was the invasion of southern France. And you hardly can ever find anything about it in the history books. But it did happen. That's where we went in, and right after that invasion. So we weren't actually in on the invasion, but right after that. So I was committed again in the late fall of '44. Primarily up in the Alsace-Lorraine area around Strasbourg, and then on that was an interesting little few weeks, and then on January 1, New Year's Day, get that, Chris? Or that's not my phone. Anyway, sorry about that.
No, Jim, before you back up a little bit, I want to hear your memories of your reaction to D-Day. Where were you, and what did you think at that time? What was your thoughts there?
Well, in D-Day, we were just getting ready to go overseas, and everybody realized that. We didn't even think about it being a failure. And so everybody said, hey, this is the beginning of the end. That's what our thoughts were. It just so happened that they were, it took a year, but it was actually the beginning of the end.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that was the main thing that you thought about. And here we go, boy. This is we're on downhill now. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember being as tensed up about it as in the States. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were training on certain facets of. We even were having amphibious training, and be perfectly frank about everything. Our mind was a little bit occupied with what we were doing, and when this happened, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, it's fine, here we go. But that was about, okay, now what we doing here, and it was that kind of thing.
Did you feel that by the time you got over there, that it would be more mop-up duty than it would be aggressive action, or did you sense anything like that?
No, I didn't even think about that.
Okay.
Didn't even think about it. And as it so happened that we were far from that.
Sure were.
It was far from that. The first month or so, first weeks, I was I was a little bit separated from my main division. We landed at Marseille and were immediately issued all quartermaster stuff. Was the division was issued new jeeps, new trucks, all new kinds of equipment, and one thing another like that. And this was all mobile equipment, and that was going to go up to the lines, over the road, with the rest of the division coming up by train. And I just was sick about the fact of having to ride a train. I mean, I just just didn't. And so when they I was in charge of a weapons platoon, which was 2 light machine guns and 3 60mm mortars. And so they said all the machine gun sections will get on these vehicles and ride security, aircraft security, whatever security, on these trucks. And I said, well, okay, but I better supervise this too. And so I went up with 2 light machine guns up into the, where we were going to stage again up north. It just so happened that I was up there almost a month before the rest of my outfit caught up there. And I was a poor little buck sergeant, and but I happened to be the ranking officer of the 42nd Division up there, with 2 light machine guns and 10 guys. And so we were hustled back and forth between whatever division needed some automatic weapons. And we were part of the 9th Division. We were part of the, not the 9th Division, 79th Division, part of the 3rd Division, the 36th Division. Whoever needed something. What the big action was down there then was with the line running generally kind of north and south. Action moving east and west primarily. On the extreme right-hand flank, or southern flank of all the Allied armies, you had the British Army up here, then you had the First Army, the Third Army, and the Seventh Army. And then down next to the right flank of the Seventh Army was the First French Army. Now, the only thing about it was that you never knew where the First French Army was. I mean, to this day, I can't figure them out. So consequently, there was always a gap that was between the right flank of the 7th Army and the left flank of the 1st French Army. And it would vary, sometimes 10 miles, 20 miles wide, right on the banks of the Rhine. And I was involved with generally tapped to ride security for patrols that were going into that gap. And I can't even remember how many we did, but that and a few other things that was, I was doing that for almost a month, and I mean there was a firefight every day, somewhere along those lines in that thing, and and my outfit wasn't even up there yet, and that was something. Anyway, around Christmas, the outfit got formed up there pretty good, and we were on the outpost outside of Strasbourg, and then a couple of things there. And then on January 1, we jumped off on the attack all across the whole big front, and it was attack at daylight. Usually we get a town to get it secured by noon, and we were making 1-2 miles a day. Very seldom, maybe a little resistance, quite a bit of resistance very first, easing off pretty quick, and then no counterattacks. That was strange, we couldn't figure. You'd be all secure usually around noon. Next day you jump off again, and we were making, like I said, 3 to 5 miles a day. On the day of the 5th of January, we hit a town called Weyersham. Weyersham, Weyersham. And we hit that town about 8 o'clock in the morning, and at midnight we still hadn't got that baby secured. It was one dandy fight going on in there. And it was, everything was happening, and then all of a sudden, bang, it just disappeared around midnight. Just disappeared. I want to share with you what I heard, because it was so significant what took place the next day. I was with my company commander when he received his order from the battalion commander. I heard the whole order, and in military jargon, when you gave a field order, it had to be in certain form, and in a certain order. Like, here we are, and here they are, and this is their strength, and this, it went into a sequence of exactly like that. And I heard the battalion commander give this order to our company commander, and it was, here we are, whatever it was, and the town was a town called Gamsheim, and they're in there at about company strength, 200 men, 250 men of company strength, and part of our battalion was going to be the whole front moving part of our battalion. We hit Gamsheim, head on and take the town, secure it, and dig in on the far side. And that was the basics of the field order. And we were supposed to approach that night. It was about 8 or 9 miles away, and we were approached that night, and then we got shelled all night long. All night long we were getting shelled, but we were moving in hilly country and everything. There was a lot of ravines and ditches and things like that you could get into, and we weren't losing very many people. But we got on the outskirts of this town. Am I too detailed about this?
No,
this is the day it all happened.
Yeah, I want the detail. Yeah, go, please.
Well,
put them all in there.
When we get right to the edge of the town, there's right in front of the town there's a creek. There's a creek bed, a forest, whole woods and everything like that, and then a railroad track, and then the town. And we get within a couple of 200 or 300 yards of that creek, and find ourselves on ground just like this, like a rug. It didn't have a tire track in it. It was just like that. And they opened up on us with automatic weapons, and we took casualties. In the first 10 seconds, we took casualties. And parts of our company, we had the 1st and the 3rd platoons were on line, and followed by headquarters platoon, and then the weapons platoon, and the 2nd platoon was in reserve. That's the way we hit the town. And elements of some of those scouts that were in that 1st and 3rd platoon were from here to you away from those guns when they opened up. They got that, they almost walked right in on top of them. And they opened up, and we were pinned down tighter than a drum on ground, just like a pool table. And and we were taking casualties. The only thing that probably saved us is that we did have a couple of tanks with us. And these tanks, they started off with about 6 machine guns that opened up. And within a minute, tanks had knocked out 2 of those guns. And then we gradually got it down to, eventually got 4 of those guns. And because the minute that gun would go off, boy, you heard that, boy, one pop, they had him. And but those last 2, they really had a hard time with those last 2. And but those 2 tanks probably saved us, And then the order comes back to fix bayonets. And when the first elements of our first elements, Gene jumped over a creek, they actually closed with them. There was some clicking and clacking going on in there. I'm 100 yards back with the weapons. And when I went across the creek, nothing was there. There were some wounded Germans, and there was a pillbox there that we cleared a pillbox, and everything settled down again. and we got through the woods, and we got up to the railroad track, and they called for the guns up there, and I took 2 machine guns up there. And now I'm back with my regular division now, so the mortars stayed back a little bit. But we went up, crossed the railroad track, and the first and third platoons started into the town. And 250 guys in there, and we're got a full battalion, 800 guys, and we're going to mop them up like like gangbusters. And Troy, you never heard such hell breaking loose in your life. What we ran into, and we're suckered into it, we ran into an SS regiment. A SS regiment now, not a battalion, a regiment, 4,000 of them were in that town, where we ran into the big fight on the thing out with the automatic weapons, where we got across the creek and on into the town. The outfits on our right and our left, they got pinned down and didn't move at all. So when we hit that town, we got about, our first elements we got maybe 50 yards into that town when it all happened. And that's when the fight starts. And it becomes known then that we're 8 miles out ahead of everybody. And of course they just right around. And then the next word comes out that we're cut off. And so we're running into tanks. We're running, at first I never saw a tiger, and I'd seen German tanks before, but we saw leopards and panthers and stuff like that, but this that tiger, boy, and that it looked like his house. They had a tiger, and they built a house around it. I mean, it was actually sitting in a house. And when he activated, he was coming out of their house and all, house flying every which way. They had them in haystacks and everything like that. And so word comes out that we're cut off, and it was just a darling fight till all of a sudden nobody's got anything to shoot. And it was right about then that I got hit, and I guess I made a fool out of myself, because I thought I lost the whole top of my head, and screaming and hollering and everything. Heard a guy holler and said he'd hit down on my left, and I was behind one of these things, a stack of potatoes, where they had potatoes all piled up and put manure on top of them and dirt on top of them. And he hollered down to my left, and I looked like this. When I looked at him out there like that, I got hit right across the top there, and it tumbled me right off of where I was. It tumbled me about 6 or 8 feet, and knocked me out. And for a couple minutes, I don't think I was out very long. And when I wake up, I go, boy, I got blood everywhere. You can't believe it. And I'm hollering and raising Cain, and everything. And I was told to get back across the tracks to an aid station back there. So the guns were doing their thing, so there wasn't any problem there. So I got back across the railroad track. We're talking about like 25 or 30 yards now. I got back across the railroad tracks into that ditch, and I was still raising all kinds of hell. And there was a guy in there, was an artillery observer, and he gave me a little talking to right quick, about shut up, shut up and deal, And there was he wanted to know if I had any ammunition. I had a bandolier with a couple of clips in it, and somebody grabbed those, and he said to get on, there was a heavy machine gun that was mounted out to the left flank. And by this time, they had moved. It was like watching a field manual coming, I mean, they'd lay down fire, and then look when they'd be closer, and then you'd see one of them, it was they were about as good as you could get. I got behind that gun, and it was laying out to the left flank, and it had about maybe a half a belt, maybe 150 rounds in it, that much. And so I got down my back in this ditch, and all I was sticking up was my hand. I guess. And I loosened it up on the tripod and just started, I held my hand on it and just started shaking it. And it was in a good spot. But a tank had gotten there, and tank hit that right under the gun. And I was right, people kind of, it's hard to believe. The only thing I had sticking up there was my hand. They blew the gun apart. I mean, the gun went everywhere. And concussion of it, knocked me out again. I'm knocked out. And I'm not exactly sure what exactly took place right then, because I guess maybe a period of time, maybe 15, 20 minutes goes by, and when I wake up, first thing I see is these two big, little SS's on his collar, and there's a German doctor, and he said, well, it's all over for you, get off here and get out of here. And he had done something, he'd fixed my head up. And so that was the day, that was the infamous day of January 6, 45 that ended it, as far as I was concerned. So actually, my days of combat was probably, like 60, couple of months. And then the only thing about it is that we were starting to get shelled again by our guys and their guys and everybody, and so they told us that we had to get out of there. And I wasn't so sure whether I felt like walking or not until the shell started, and then I decided right then I better walk. The one thing that I really haven't spoken to anybody too much about, I've been I don't mind telling everybody some of the humorous thing that took place afterwards in prison and up to now and everything like that, but the night of the interrogation was, I guess that's the most terrified I was ever in my whole life, because you just didn't know what was ever going to happen. I mean, we got knocked around. I mean, they worked us all over pretty good, but that's one thing. I mean, working you over with a block of wood or with their fist or something like that is one thing. But during this whole thing, there was one guy just kept walking around, and he had a pistol in his right hand, and he had it in his hand, and he just kept walking around, and then he'd go outside, and maybe take somebody outside, and you'd hear a gun go off. And it so happened that nobody ever found anybody, that actually got shot out there. But, the psychological stuff was taking place. And I don't mind telling you that I was absolutely terrified that night. I mean, not from getting knocked around, but just this guy with that pistol walking around. It was a little hairy. And then that got broken up again by some more shelling that came in, and that stopped all that. And I had to be, thankful of that, because I don't mind telling you that night really, and right to this day, I can sit at that baby sometimes, wake up and say, wait, and like one of these kids asked me, said, were you scared? And nah, I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared any time. Terrified, yeah, but scared.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were, I had other things. I could certain things that might wet my pants. Many times, as a matter of fact. And it's just hard to describe. You know what? That first night was really, really fierce, and I've told me more than I've probably told anybody about that. After that, it was all pretty much stuff that you could handle.
Was the interrogation done in English?
I'm sorry?
Was,
Just like you're talking to me right now.
is that right?
They didn't have accents. They didn't have anything.
Is that right?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, later on, right before the war ended, well, I got loose for a little bit, and they cut down on us with a burp gun. I went in a ditch, and I don't know, maybe I told you about this already. I don't know. And this guy run up alongside that thing, and he says, "Get your ass out of that ditch," just like that. I mean, he had no accent at all, you know. And I was surprised that I guess about half and half of them could speak English, and another half of those would speak it like you and me. I mean, the slang and everything. And but anyway, that was the outside of the heavy patrol action I was in for better over a month, and a couple of outpost actions and things like that. That was really the first day of the big offensive. It didn't last very long for us, and but we ran into that regiment, were cut off, and like I said, the fight was a dandy one. But about 2 o'clock in the afternoon is when I got hit, and I think it was all over with by about 3 or 4. And next thing I know, our battalion was, I think about 250 of them got out, and I think they captured around 250 of them, and I don't know what happened to the other ones.
When you were knocked out and you woke up and the German doctor said, "That's it, get out of here," where were you? What were you in a just a how did
Just a hut.
just a hut?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was just, we were on the outskirts of that town we were trying to take. It was right near the railroad track, and there were so many funny things. Looking back on them, were so many funny things that happened that just difficult to believe. You know, I told you they blew the gun up that I was on. When I got to that, when I woke up, I had one grenade, and they had taken that one grenade, of course, and I had picked up a Luger from that morning, and when we first hit the woods, I got a hold of the Luger, and it was inside my shirt, and my belt, and my shirt had covered it, and they never got it. And on my leg, on the ankle, I had the trench knife, was strapped, right above my boot. And they never got that. My trouser leg got over it, and they never got that. And they got the grenade, of course, and whatever else I had. But there I woke up, they took me off the table, and I found myself, I got a Luger and a trench knife. And I didn't know what was going to happen if I found me with that Luger. So I found it necessary to stumble and fall, and I fell into a big snowdrift, and I buried that thing arm deep in that snowdrift and got rid of that Luger. And I never did get rid of that. I kept that knife the whole time. And as a matter of fact, I gave it to my son-in-law. Joe Hibben polished it all up, and he's got it on his wall. So that was a strange thing. But the strangest part of all was when I got up off that table, I still had the back plate, buffer tube, pistol grip of that machine gun in my hand. That's all that was left of that machine gun. And I had it in my hand, and my hand was a little numb. But nothing else. I mean, they blew a gun apart, a 250-pound piece of equipment. They blew it apart. And my fingers were a little numb. And that's hard to believe. If you know the construction of one of those things, it's just hard to believe that could happen.
Yeah.
And so then after interrogation, I was in a hospital for I'm not exactly sure how long, 3 or 4 days, maybe 4 or 5 days. And while I was in his hospital, the Red Cross, and one funny thing, Red Cross came by and handed me a postcard. And the postcard was printed mostly, and you just filled in the blanks, your name, and it was said a couple, I'm being well treated, and I'm a prisoner of war. And that was all printed on there. And you could send this postcard. Everybody got a postcard. And of course, the rumors were all flying around, the war is over. I mean, we're within a couple of weeks of the war being over. And I'm not going to bother with this thing. And I started collecting those postcards. And I got over 100 of them that I've got them right there in the hospital. And I filled them out, 50 of them to Rosemary and 50 of them to my family. And the way that they found out that I was a POW was one postcard got through to Rosemary. Wow. You believe that?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And that was their first notice that I was a PW. And that was like in April. And so all that time from January to April, all they had was a MIA notice. And so one postcard got through, and then Rosemary's dad had some connections with Happy Chandler, who was a senator at the time. And he got on, and they found out some information about that, what had happened, and that it was pretty reliable information that I was alive. So then out of the hospital was the next rugged thing. I went to the camp at Hammelburg, which is like 200 miles away up right. It's about 50 miles to the east of Frankfurt, right in central Germany. And the trip on the train up there was supposed to take place, like 6 or 7 hours. And we were in these cattle cars just stuffed in there. And we were on that thing for 6 days. That was the worst. That interrogation was the worst thing of it all. Because that's when I had my legs frozen, my feet frozen, and all that stuff. No food, no water. Got bombed a couple times and strafed. And we finally got to Hammelburg, and everything was pretty routine there until Patton hit it. And I think did I tell you that? Yeah, I told you about that.
I want you to tell it again. Now, wait, let's back up on this railroad car a little bit. That had to be.
It was terrible.
Awful.
Terrible being on there for 6 days. I mean, you can figure out that with a car that was, 35, 38 feet long.
Much smaller than our box cars.
Oh, yeah. And, 50, 60 guys in there, or I don't know how many, we could, almost like this. Couldn't get out. And there was nothing, no sanitary about it. They gave us some cheese and enough water to, last 6 or 8 hours. And after that, it was, just sit there and tough it out, And so that was really about the worst thing. Got into the prison camp, it was back in the routine again. Don't do anything wrong, or don't smart off, or anything like that, and you get by okay.
Did you feel on the trip there that what did you think? I mean, did you think that did you have any idea where you were going? Did you have any idea of time other than light and dark?
Oh yeah. The cars were actually just like there were cattle cars. You could, there were strips you could look see out from. Yeah, you could see out. We knew we were supposed to be on there 6 hours on that train. We knew we were going to be going about 100 miles. And we knew that much. Mm-hmm. And when, of course, the first night we first get on there about noon, and when it gets dark and you're sitting there with no place, nowhere going all through the night, and colder than a boy, it was cold as a gun barrel, and the next day, well, surely we'll get there. And it was at the end of very early in the morning of the 6 days when we got there, let us out of those things. It was a mess.
What was the interaction of the men on the car? What was going on? I mean, were you numb? Were you running around to try to stay warm? I mean, jogging in place.
All of the above. I mean, well, you weren't running around because there wasn't any room to
run around, but
movement. The fear, there was two things. First was the extreme discomfort from the cold and the crowded conditions and everything like that. That was one thing. The other thing was that we were getting every day that we were out on the main line on the tracks and everything, we were getting hit some way, shape, manner, or form by our Air Force.
Sure.
And I never really knew. In our particular car, we had one guy that got his arm broken, and I think he probably had an arm sticking out or something like that. Anyway, he got hit, but Lord, we were, it was just lucky, I guess, that that's all that happened. I think there were casualties on the train, though. There was about 8 cars on the train.
That's what I was going to ask.
There was about 8 cars.
And I'm sure the tracks were getting blown up ahead of it.
Yeah, it was. It was a mess. This is the start when things were really starting to go bad for Germany, big time bad, and the bulge, of course, was already over. And that's what actually happened down there when Patton came in and relieved the 101st Division at Bastogne. He effectively just stopped he just stopped it right then. I mean, that stopped the whole bulge. As a matter of fact, then that they probably took maybe 100,000 prisoners, German prisoners, after that didn't get out. But the ones that did get out went right down there, and we were on the attack, and we got caught into a similar situation down there. I mean, that's the way I looked at it. I don't know whether anybody ever explained it that way or not. Well, where else did they ever get that many guys all at one time? Right. Run into a regiment, for crying out loud.
Right.
Of SS. And I tell you, there was a difference when you fought the SS and when you fought the Wehrmacht. It was a little bit of a difference.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the SS were. One thing about the SS is that they had a reputation of being kind of brutal and everything like that, but they also were real professionals. The Wehrmacht, the SS probably, I never did actually see an SS, ever do anything to a prisoner. But the Wehrmacht, and I never saw this either, but I heard so many stories of the Wehrmacht they'd get 4 or 5 guys as prisoner. They didn't ever do anything. They just dispatch them right there. Mm-hmm. And of course, I don't know. I think that probably went on both sides of the fence. I'm not sure about that. But the SS, the big problem in our interrogation. When I found this out later, the big problem in our interrogation was a silly, stupid thing. Now, first of all, they had no idea. They thought maybe we were special troops. Or else we wouldn't have been dumb enough to walk into that town like we were. Yeah. And that's a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, we walked in that town like fat, dumb, and happy, and we're going to whomp your bucket. And here's a guy sitting in there with all these, and that's the first thing. So they figure, who are these people? The next thing is that the table of equipment for my platoon was 2 light machine guns, and these light machine guns were on tripods, and you used them as up a clip and a right a clip, and this, that, and the other thing. Very little of the spraying activity. And right before we right before we went overseas, they took the light machine gun, took the tripod away, replaced a little clip-on, a screw-on bipod on the front of the gun, and a punched-out shoulder stock that went across the back, the buffer tube on the back, and they turned it into a shoulder weapon on a bipod. And so I had a light machine gun with a shoulder thing, and we had 4 of them. Now, first thing, we weren't supposed to have that kind of machine gun, and we were only supposed to have 2 of them. And then we had that kind of gun and had 4 of them, and then running into them like we did. So that was the big deal about the interrogation. That's why it was so feverish. I was told anyway, because I couldn't figure out why they were, making all that to do over a buck sergeant. And I kept telling them, I'll tell you what you want to know if I knew. Where'd you get those guns? They gave them to us down in Marseille, like I said, I'm not very too proud of myself in that interrogation. I mean, I don't think I wasn't going to knowingly tell them something they didn't know, but I sure wasn't going to sit there and refuse to tell them something they already did know.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. I mean, I heard them talking to one other guy, and they talking about how they knew the name of our outfit and our battalion commanders and the names of all these things, and I think they got one regimental commander wrong, and had all this stuff, and then they started asking me those kind of questions. I think I'm going to get my block knocked off just for something that they already know, just because it's supposed to be name, rank, and serial number. Well, not Jim.
No.
And I'm not proud of it, but that's the way it was.
Sure.
And, that to me just seemed kind of stupid. If you come in here and say, look, I know you got to have a brick in your pocket, and I'm going to ask you if you got a brick in your pocket, and I'm going to knock your block off if you don't tell me, and I'm going to say, yeah, I got a brick in my pocket.
Exactly.
That's just about, this is silly.
Let me ask you a question, Jim, about, and this is kind of off the subject a little bit, but you've done so much studying on the war, and especially around the Battle of the Bulge. And I was reading your comrade book again yesterday on Hammelburg, and he believes that 2 units, and I'm not sure what the designation, battalion, regiment, whatever they were fairly well set up to be sacrificed for the Germans to take the bait at the Battle of the Bulge so that they could be surrounded by Patton and so on.
Well, all I know is this. I don't know what the motive. I do know this, that they pulled the 2nd Division and the 1st Division and 4th Division off the line, and these were seasoned troops. That were some of them all the way from Africa. This was the cream of what we had. And they pulled them off the line, and they replaced them with the 106th and the 99th Division. And they were just gotten there. And like I said, when they just gotten there, it wasn't they didn't get there a week before anything. They got off the boat and went right up into the line, right at this spot. And they hit the 106th Division. Was just about annihilated. The 106th Division was just about captured intact. And I wanted to show you is and I got a bulletin. I get things messed up, so from the organization, the PW organization.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I have to tell you it is. The 106th Division has a reunion every year. And they were Well, they were. Only thing I can tell you is the whole division was captured. I mean, everything. I mean, just about the time they were getting in there and taking their shirts off, they got hit.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the motivation was. I don't know what the plan was or anything like that. All I know is that there were 2 green divisions were put up in where there was 4 seasoned, tough fighting outfits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I don't know whether there was a motive behind that or not. If what he said in there was true, if it were true, they were working off on a pretty tight timetable. Because Patton, according to a lot of things I've read, Patton had a hard time getting the assignment to go to Bastogne.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to go up and say that they could march 100 miles in
Yeah.
24 hours and
Yeah.
fight when they got there.
Yeah.
And he did.
And he did. Yeah.
And oh, what a crusty so-and-so. Saw him one time I was about from here to Jarl's car out there. And he drove up and he was, what's the word, resplendent?
That sounds good.
Pink riding breeches, the cavalry boots, the pearl-handled pistols, and the varnished helmet liner and rank and stars and everything all around. Jumped out of his command car, jumped right in a mud puddle. And in a minute he talked to several people of this and that and everything, and in about 5 minutes, I mean, he was mud from head to foot. Got in that command car and off he went, and that's the only time I ever saw him. One time we were, when I was running these patrols, back, before my outfit got up there, when I was running these patrols, I was, said we were going to be in the 7th Army and to, take everything off, your rank and everything, stripes and everything. And the only thing you had was officers had a vertical bar on the back of their helmets, about 3 inches high and an inch wide. And the non-coms had a horizontal bar. And that was, about the only idea you had as far as what your rank was. And when you get in Patton's army, the first thing he said, where's your stripes? Where's your this? Get them back on there, get your division. I mean, he wanted everybody to know who you were and everything.
Yeah.
So he was a piece of work, all right. And I forgot that you bought that book, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And it's just about, I mean, that tells the whole story. That my situation was an exact parallel. A couple of things were a little different. One is that on the day that we were liberated, he must have been down right in the town, because he referred to a pretty stiff fight.
Yeah.
Did he not?
Yeah, he did.
And where I was, about a mile away, there wasn't anything. I think maybe I told you that story, that while the rest of all my friends and everything had gotten with the German farmers and everybody like it and having just one great big party. I mean, a party. I mean, the schnapps was flowing like water, and the food was going, and I spent the whole day digging a hole. And I said, I know we're going to be liberated, and I said, there's almost got to be a fight, and I just can't see me on the day I get liberated getting my butt shot off, and all because I wanted to party a little bit.
Yeah.
And it took me all day long. I mean, it took me from when I got up in the morning until dark, digging that hole. But it was a good one. And I had tools too. I got the tools out of the barn, and so I had a real good, and by the time it got dark and everything, then I tried to get in on the party, but it was pretty much too tired to much anything. And the next day, they came in, 14th Armored came in, and they must have had this fight that he talked about.
Yeah.
But where we were, I mean, they were fired a shot. Which was all right with me too.
Absolutely.
I didn't mind
You
that
weren't
at all.
complaining with
But other than that, there's some things in there that he talked about that was a little bit more severe than I had them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I think he got knocked around a little bit.
He did. Yeah.
And as I remember some of the things, well, so did I. But
Yeah.
I think they just, with me, there was reasons. You know, I mean, just dumb things. I can't remember how dumb you can be when you're 19 years old. You know?
Well, I tell you what, let's do, Jim. This is a pretty good place to end this tape. What we've done is we've got you almost to Hammelburg, and that's where we are. And so what we'll do next week.
I just don't. You can sure let me know how detailed you want to be, because I'm just hitting the high spot.
I want you to be
Now,
as
from
detailed as you
Hammelburg-
will.
From Hammelburg, the last 30 days, from the 27th of March until the 2nd of May, would make a hell of a motion picture.
I understand. A lot of walking.
Would make a but it would make a great picture.
Well, we want to hear that, and
And,
the detail is
Well, I
much
mean,
as
I
you
can
get.
do that, and really the only thing I'm really squeamish about, there's just a couple of incidents. One instance was the interrogation, and I'm a little squeamish about that. I'm a little ashamed about it. I guess I don't really know what you want to call it. I was frightened. I was absolutely terrified at that thing. I didn't think that we'd ever see. You know, I thought this is going to end. You know, right here.
Yeah.
And it was a different feeling than when you were in the line and you were going through a regular fight or something. That's one feeling. But this is, I mean, you just feel like you still got a little control. And but this is just completely different. You're completely out of control. You were nothing you could do, and you just didn't know when it was going to happen. But you knew it was going to. Mm-hmm. And I didn't. I don't. There's not much else to tell.